Okay, everybody. So it looks like we are live. Uh, my apologies for the short silent movie that you just watched. I had to make sure that we were uh, functioning properly on X and YouTube. I'm not, unfortunately, joined by my compadre Rami Yahya today. He had other commitments he had to attend to. Um, Welcome, Ashura, who tells us it's the first time Ashura has joined us for a live. Where's BB hiding? Mineski asks. Great question. There's some indications he fled to Greece, but I don't think his whereabouts are actually known by anybody outside the Israeli and US governments. In any case, we are going to talk about this terrible turn of events in West Asia. And of course, I'm talking about the criminal war of aggression on Iran, because that's precisely what it is. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit of detail. As you will have seen, those of you who were alerted to this live stream by my notification on X, we do intend to speak with our comrade Laith Marouf, the executive director of Free Palestine TV. He will be joining us in 45 minutes from Beirut with, I'm sure, some choice commentary and excellent insights. But I wanted to spend the first 45 minutes reviewing with you the essentials of what has transpired here from a practical, political, and legal perspective before we invite Laith into the discussion. So it appears that you can all hear me okay. If there's any problem in you're hearing me, please let me know right away. With that, let's get started on the extraordinarily dangerous and consequential events of the last 24 hours. As all of you, or certainly many of you will know, last evening, on the evening of June 12th, Israel launched waves of aerial attacks on Iran. And the last time I checked, which was a couple hours ago, those attacks were ongoing. And Israel has promised many more. The Netanyahu regime describes the strikes as preemptive, and some corporate media outlets have repeated that claim without criticism or skepticism. Let me show you one. This is the Times of India. Now, the Times of India at least had the good graces to put the phrase preemptive strikes in quotation marks, but I've seen other media outlets that did not do that, and that whether they did it or not, many of them are lending legitimacy to this description of what Israel has done. The fundamental fatal flaw in this description is that a preemptive strike is one that is launched in reasonable anticipation. I think this is the generally understood meaning of the phrase preemptive strike, both in international law and just in our day-to-day discourse about international relations. A preemptive strike is one that is launched in reasonable anticipation of an imminent attack by the state or other non-state actor that is targeted with the preemptive strike. There is absolutely no evidence to support, none that is credible, to support Israel's insinuation that it was on the verge of being attacked by Iran. As a matter of fact, the last of the two parties to launch an attack on the other was Israel. It attacked Iran in October of last year, and despite Iranian government threats to retaliate with what it called True Promise 3, it hasn't done that. And in fact, ever since then, not only did it refrain from, up until now, from responding to Israel's acts of aggression in October of last year, acts of aggression that, were one of many acts of aggression over many years against the Islamic Republic. Not only did it not retaliate to the October 2024 attacks, Iran, but it also didn't attack Israel, even though Israel trashed the ceasefire agreement and resumed with the Palestinian militants in Gaza and resumed slaughtering them and starving them, outright starving them. It didn't attack Israel, even though Israel violated the ceasefire agreement with Iranian ally Hezbollah in Lebanon and has continued to violate that ceasefire agreement every single day. If anything, Iran has shown, whatever you may think of the government, I don't know that any rational person could possibly make a case that it was, itching to go to war with Israel and was on the verge of attacking Israel. In fact, it has shown quite remarkable restraint since Israel last attacked it. So there's no reasonable basis, certainly. I wouldn't say there's not even an unreasonable basis for Israel's suggestion that it needed to launch these strikes on Iran to protect itself. In fact, if anything, Israel has endangered itself by launching these attacks. If anything, Israel has given Iran a greater incentive to develop a nuclear weapon. I'm sure that the Iranian government is keenly aware of the fact that, the West has shown extraordinary belligerence towards North Korea, but has never attacked it in the way that Iran has been attacked, and almost certainly because North Korea developed a nuclear deterrent. So again, these are not preemptive strikes. This is a naked act of aggression, and therefore a frontal assault on the United Nations Charter. And any government or international organization or media organization that claims to be committed to the principles of the United Nations Charter, whatever it or they may think of the government of Iran, should have no hesitation in condemning Israel's, its frontal assault on the principles of the United Nations Charter. Now, these attacks, and there's video evidence to back this up, have killed women and children. The Israeli attacks have also killed senior Iranian military figures and Iranian nuclear scientists, and we know this because Iran's government has confirmed this. In fact, I must say I've been somewhat surprised at the level of candor that the Iranian government has displayed in the last 24 hours about the losses it has sustained, at the hands of the Israelis. And I think this may have something to do very much with the culture and the religion that predominates in Iran, where people who die in what the Iranian government regards as a cause of justice are honored. And rather than their deaths being hidden, they are held up as martyrs who sacrifice their lives in the cause of justice. So that may be what is ultimately driving this, I think, quite notable degree of transparency we're seeing thus far from Iran about the personnel losses it has suffered. One of the persons who was killed, one of the nuclear scientists, was a man by the name of Abdul Hamid Manoucher. He was the head of the Department of Nuclear Engineering at Tehran University. An Iranian friend of mine, whom I'm not going to identify because she's in a sensitive situation right now outside of Iran, doing something related to the Palestinian cause. In any case, she advised me today that her family, she and her family, knew Dr. Manoucher and his family personally because they were neighbors of her family years ago. And she tells me tragically that Dr. Manoucher's entire family was killed by the Israeli monster. And she also tells me that Dr. Manoucher's research team had just developed a novel treatment for cancer using nuclear technology. As for the military officials whose killings have been confirmed, they include Brigadier General Amir Ali Hashizadeh, and excuse me for any mispronunciations. He was the commander of the Revolutionary Guard's Aerospace Force. Major General Mohammed Bagheri, the Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Islamic Republic. Major General Gholam Ali Rashid, commander of the Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, and Major General Hossein Salami, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Obviously, very serious losses. And It's surprising. We'll get into this, how this happened, because, of course, Iran would have watched with horror and, alarm the ways in which the genocidal entity succeeded in killing one senior figure from its ally Hezbollah in the past 12 months. So one would have thought that, these individuals, given their importance within the Iranian military uh, establishment, would have been taking steps to protect themselves. But, as I said, I'm going to get into this. They may have been lulled into a sense of complacency by what Israel is calling a deception operation. And it may be that they simply didn't think that they would be killed in their own residences, where at least a couple of them appear to have been targeted. In any event, the Iranian military has issued several statements about their deaths and about Israel's attacks, and I'd like to take you to the second of those statements. This was issued this morning, and you'll see there the armed forces of the Islamic Republic identify, I think, 3 out of the 4 individuals I mentioned, and honors them as martyrs who sacrificed their lives for the defense of the country. And in the last paragraph, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Iran extends its congratulations and condolences on the martyrdom of these dear ones and assures His Eminence, the awaited Imam al-Mahdi, peace be upon him, the supreme leader of the armed forces, the resilient Iranian people, and the proud armed forces, that after the terrorist occupier entity has crossed all red lines, relying on Allah the Almighty and the support of the zealous people of the Islamic Republic of Iran, there are no longer any limits to our response to this crime. The hand of divine vengeance shall reach this brutal terrorist entity and its supporters, which, if this threat is to be carried out, would presumably include the United States. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So, so far, in terms of retaliation, however, that's obviously strong language. I don't think I've seen language that strong from the Iranian military over many years of belligerent discourse with the genocidal entity. But so far, all I've seen are reports, and I confess I haven't been able to check in the last 45 minutes. So if there's been some late breaking news about an Iranian retaliation, please don't hesitate to let me know in the chat. But the only thing I've seen thus far is reports that Iran launched 100 or more drones at Israel, and numerous reports that the air forces of the United States and Britain were mobilized to shoot down some of these drones, in addition, of course, to Israel's diabolical air force. And apparently the Jordanian monarchy has no shame in admitting that it too has been shooting down these drones, although it has positioned its response to the Iranian retaliation as an effort to protect the airspace of Jordan, a sovereign state. One wonders whether Jordan would take the similar action if Israel was launching drones or missiles across its airspace towards Iran, or if Israeli military aircraft were traveling through Jordanian airspace. Would the Jordanians shoot them down to protect the sovereignty of their airspace? I don't think so. In any case, let's see what the Trump administration is saying about these criminal attacks. We're going to start with Marco Rubio. If you just bear with me one second. It's a short statement from the neocon Secretary of State issued yesterday. So this would have been, probably within minutes, at the most hours of the commencement of the attacks. Rubio states, tonight Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us that they believed this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. Interesting that he didn't say Iran should not target Israel, but I want to focus, whether there's any significance to that or not. I don't want to debate, because I suspect that if Iran delivers a powerful strike on Israel, the United States will not hesitate to intervene in some manner. I very much doubt that it will be able to restrain itself. But in any case, I want to focus on the phrase unilateral action. So the clear implication of this statement, it seems to me, and what the United States government wants you to believe, is that it knew about this. Implicitly, I think it's saying we certainly didn't do anything to stop it. They told us they thought it was necessary, and we accepted their explanation, but they did it on their own. And we did not participate in this. We were just sort of kept in the loop and given an opportunity to object, which we did not do. I think that's the sensible way to read this claim, this statement by Rubio. Personally, I consider it implausible in the extreme that Israel's attacks are truly unilateral. In other words, that they are not being facilitated in some manner by the United States military. And again, I've said many times, I'm not a military expert, but based on what I've heard from military experts, including numerous of them from the West, given the distance between Iran and Israel and the size of Israel's Air Force, which is much smaller than that of the major military powers, and given the limited ability of Israel's Air Force to conduct and sustain long-range attacks, it seems to me to be a virtual certainty that Israel is being assisted by the U.S. military in some manner. And I'm going to come back to something Trump has been saying, which I think supports this interpretation. But the real question here is, for sensible people, what is the extent of the assistance, and what is the nature of the assistance, the military assistance that the United States has given to Israel in connection with these attacks? That it has given some form of assistance, like long range, refueling aircraft for Israel's fighters. Tim Anderson on X published a video which he understands to be a video of an American tanker aircraft refueling an Israeli bomber or fighter in flight. This, I think, was shot apparently over either Syrian territory or Iraqi territory. And there have also been credible reports of U.S. Intelligence gathering aircraft being positioned in places that would have been of assistance to the Israelis in the conduct of these attacks. I think we would be naive in the extreme to believe that this was a truly unilateral action, as Rubio claims. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if the United States itself has directly participated in the attacks by using its own fighter jets, its own long-range bombers, its own missile-capable naval vessels in the Indian Ocean or in other parts of the region. We shouldn't take their word for it at all. They have zero credibility. The United States has shown over and over and over again, its government has, that it will arm Israel to the teeth no matter what Israel does. And if ever there was a conflict where Israel needed U.S. support, more than ever, this is the one. This is the conflict where I think the Trump administration would be most minded to lend assistance to Israel because of the strength and the military capabilities of the party against whom it has launched this war of aggression, namely the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I don't purport to know exactly what the nature and extent of the military assistance is, but I would be shocked if the United States hasn't provided very serious military and intelligence assistance to Israel in connection with these attacks. Now, you may ask, why would the Trump administration lie about its participation in these attacks? Well, it has two powerful reasons to lie. First of all, this would constitute, an act of war by the United States, and I believe does constitute an act of war by the United States against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And technically speaking, the Trump administration needs the approval of Congress to launch a war on another state under the U.S. Constitution, and it obviously hasn't done that. And I think, for reasons that should be easy to appreciate, it was disinclined to do that. First of all, I don't think Trump believes that he should be constrained by the U.S. Constitution. But secondly, he didn't want to, have a debate about this in the U.S. Congress and give, the public a motivation and an opportunity to mobilize and to apply pressure on the Congress not to authorize this insane aggression. The second reason, a non-legal reason, rather a political reason why the Trump administration has a motive to lie about its participation in these attacks, is that it understands perfectly well that, the vast majority of Americans do not want to go to war with Iran. And I'm going to show you evidence of that, undeniable evidence. So this is a report on a poll that came out last month, which showed that nearly 2/3 of Republicans preferred that the issue of Iran's nuclear program be addressed by means of negotiation rather than by means of war. The overall numbers, if you look in the second paragraph, the polling published by the University of Maryland Critical Issues Poll, this is a report on responsible statecraft, as you can see, conducted from May 2nd through 5th, surveying over 1,000 respondents over 18, showed that a majority of Americans, 69%, including 64% of Republicans, view a negotiated agreement to limit Iran's nuclear program with monitoring as the best way to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. And notice this wasn't even the question, which apparently was put to the respondents was, do you believe it wasn't do you agree that Iran should have no nuclear program at all, which is basically what Israel was insisting. It was actually a much more modest position that they were asked to endorse, the respondents. They were asked to endorse whether there should be limits on Iran's nuclear program, not whether they supported the abolition of the nuclear program. And again, 69% accepted that was a laudable goal that should be achieved by means of negotiation. Only 14% of respondents and less than 1 in 4 Republicans, 24%, preferred that the U.S. take military action to inhibit or destroy Iran's nuclear program. So, and this is why I've been saying for months that we are being treated to a shameless kabuki theater when it comes not only to the Trump administration's policies with respect to Iran, but also its policies with respect to Gaza and its policies with respect to the Ukraine war. Trump figured out during the course of the election, because he has very clever, capable, well-equipped public relations experts and campaign strategists, that there were a lot of people in the United States who don't want the United States to become embroiled in any more wars and want a number of its military engagements to be wound down and ended definitively. So there was this large block of voters available to Trump, which the Democrats were doing absolutely nothing to court. In fact, the Democrats, were just, they knew only one line, and that line was belligerence, hostility, war against Russia, against China, against Iran, against the resistance groups in West Asia. There was no stated desire on their part to negotiate. In fact, they completely cut off lines of communication with the Russian Federation, which was an extraordinarily dangerous thing to do. So Trump found himself, on the advice of his campaign team, in the enviable position of not having any competition for this large block of voters that didn't want war. So he lied. He said, I'm the candidate of peace. It's terrible how all those Russians and those Ukrainians are dying, those fine young men, and this thing could spin out of control. I was even prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt, as I've said in a prior rant of the week, when he returned to the White House, although I was deeply suspicious I didn't immediately conclude that he was lying, but now I don't think there's absolutely any basis. There's zero basis to believe that this man has the slightest interest in pursuing peace and ending any of these wars. And so he's rhetorically boxed in a corner because he made this, pitch that he was going to be the candidate of peace. So he has to pretend that he's going to do everything possible to avoid these wars. All of these negotiations that have been going on are just a sham. The negotiations that have been going on in Ukraine, the negotiations with the resistance groups in Palestine, the negotiations with Hezbollah, the negotiations with Iran. This is all kabuki theater, folks, which is designed to deceive Trump's base and anybody else who might potentially become a Trump supporter into thinking that Trump actually genuinely wants peace. But he never had the slightest interest in peace. And there should just be no doubt about that anymore. And I'm going to come back to that in a couple of minutes. So there's a third reason, by the way, why Trump has a motivation to lie about his involvement in these things. And that is because, if he admitted, for example, to Vladimir Putin, if he admitted that he knew about the attacks on Russia's nuclear bombers by Ukraine in advance and approved it, that would be the end of any kind of discussions or dialogue between the Russian Federation and the Trump administration. And Trump is very much trying to secure a ceasefire so that, in my opinion, so that the Ukrainians can rearm and mobilize more men to die in this proxy war, at a time when Ukraine is losing badly and is retreating all over the battlefield. That's why he's been seeking a ceasefire. It's not because he wants peace. So he needed to, he needed to engage in some plausible deniability about all of these things. So that's the third reason why he had a motive to lie. But Trump, in my estimation, there's really no doubt that this war criminal, he's been greenlighting, authorizing, even encouraging Israel's satanic behavior in Palestine. He's been encouraging escalations, enabling, facilitating escalations by the Ukrainian proxy. And he has been encouraging, facilitating, and is potentially directly participating in this criminal war of aggression on Iran, despite all of his claims to be a candidate of peace. So if you had any doubts about my analysis, I think it's supported by a post that Trump put out on Truth Social today, apparently. So let me pull that up. And here's what the Donald had to say in this post today. I gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest of words, just do it. No matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. I told them it would be much worse than anything they know, anticipated, or were told, that the United States makes the best and most lethal weaponry, military equipment anywhere in the world by far, and that Israel has a lot of it with much more to come, and they know how to use it. Certain Iranian hardliners spoke bravely, but they didn't know what was about to happen. They are all dead now, and it will only get worse. There has already been great death and destruction, but there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire. No more death, no more destruction. Just do it before it is too late. God bless you all. The Donald thinks, war is a Nike commercial. Just do it, folks. But look at this language. He's not even shy about highlighting the barbarism of what Israel is doing. He uses the words, brutal. They're all dead. There's much worse to come. There'll be nothing left. I mean, this is the language of a shameless warmonger. I don't know how anybody could think, reading this statement at this critical moment in what could quickly evolve into the worst military conflict in the post-World War II period in this region of the world, how anybody could think that this man has a peaceful bone in his body. He obviously approves of what Israel did. He knows exactly what Israel plans to do. He wants Israel to do it if the Iranians don't capitulate, and he knows perfectly well that it's highly unlikely that they're going to capitulate. Can we please, once and for all, dispense with the fiction that Trump is a peacemaker? And just to close out the loop on this, let me show you a tweet that the impostor put out. Sorry, let me move this. Day before, on June 12th. This is what he had to say the day before, just hours before the attacks began. We remain committed. You see, it's June 12th at 5:09 p.m. We remain committed to a diplomatic resolution to the Iran nuclear issue. My entire administration has been directed to negotiate with Iran. They could be a great country, but they first must completely give up hopes of obtaining a nuclear weapon. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Hard to believe that the president of the United States communicates in this way. In any event, he's committed to a diplomatic resolution, and I believe that there was another meeting scheduled to take place this weekend between negotiators for the Islamic Republic and the U.S. government. And hours later, after putting out this post, with the full knowledge of the U.S. government, Israel begins its, as Trump put them, brutal attacks on the Islamic Republic. That's what he called them. What conclusion are we to draw from these posts? It's that Trump is a pathological liar. This was intended to deceive the Iranians into believing that an attack was not imminent. And if you don't believe me, well, you don't have to take my word for it, as a matter of fact. So let me show you some evidence to back that up, that this was all just a ruse, these negotiations and these statements on the eve of Israel's attacks, that Trump remained committed to negotiation. This is a tweet by a character known as Amit Siegel, who Max Blumenthal describes as a mouthpiece of Netanyahu. And he put this out yesterday. Israeli source: the attack on Iran was preceded by a deception operation that included media and diplomatic components, both internal and external, involving various actors. Israel succeeded in surprising Iran with psychological maneuvers. So just to drive the point home, the Times of Israel came out with an article, I believe it was today, which supports this account of what has transpired. Here we go. U.S. helped, and this is an explicit, you notice Amit Siegel's tweet didn't actually identify any of the external actors. The Times of Israel is not being shy. The U.S. participated in a massive campaign to lull Iran into thinking an attack was not going to happen imminently. Channel 12 reports. U.S. President Donald Trump said Thursday that an Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear sites could very well happen, but advised against it, saying the possibility of a deal was fairly close if Tehran compromises on its atomic ambitions in ongoing talks with the U.S. So, again, there you have it, folks. The Israeli media is confirming, for what it's worth, that the Donald was part of a deception operation. I love how these megalomaniacal, narcissistic Zionists describe, their simplistic, childish schemes. What they call a deception operation. Let's just take a bald look at it. What is it? What is the deception operation? The deception operation is that Donald Trump told the Iranians that he was serious about negotiations when he was lying through his teeth. That's it. That's the deception operation. How is that some kind of sophisticated intelligence maneuver, that outfoxed the Iranians, especially when the day before the attack or 2 days before the attack, Trump acknowledged that he was pulling non-essential diplomatic personnel out of West Asia because shit was, potentially going to hit the fan. You call that a deception operation? All that Donald Trump has done with this so-called deception operation is confirm that he's a pathological liar, that his word is mud, and he is utterly agreement incapable. So that is going to have, by the way, profound repercussions for people in the West, and particularly in the United States in the years ahead. In order for you to function in a constructive manner in international relations, even if you're understood to be a government, as the United States government is, that has zero regard for international law, at least, try to inspire some confidence in the people you're dealing with that you can be counted upon to keep your word if you enter into an agreement, or that you can be counted upon to negotiate in good faith when you say you want to do a deal, rather than end up in a military conflict. If nobody takes you serious, like the boy who cried wolf, you keep crying wolf, and every time the villagers realize that you're just playing with them, eventually when the wolf shows up, they're not going to believe you, and you're going to get eaten by the wolf. Maybe that sounds like the kind of analogy that Trump would use. Sorry for that, but that's essentially what is happening here. The United States government has destroyed its own credibility, and to be fair to Donald Trump, it didn't start with him. This goes back years, and Biden certainly gave international, foreign governments ample reason to believe that the U.S. government was agreement incapable. So woe be to us living in the West, who are now represented by people who have less than zero credibility in the eyes of the non-Western world. So what has the International Atomic Energy Agency had to say about this? This is, I think, an important consideration. Let me show you a statement by the head of the IAEA. I think it's Mario. The last name is Grossi. He put out this statement I think, within the last few hours. This is not the entire statement, but it's the part I think is most pertinent. Second paragraph, Grossi says, this development, namely the attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, and Israel has attacked nuclear facilities, nuclear reactors and nuclear enrichment facilities. This development, says Grossi, is deeply concerning. I have repeatedly stated that nuclear facilities must never be attacked regardless of the context or circumstances, as it could harm both people and government. Such attacks have serious implications for nuclear safety, security, and safeguards, as well as regional and international peace and security. And he goes on to cite resolutions of the General Conference. I think that's of the General Conference of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, that any armed attack on and threat against nuclear facilities devoted to peaceful purposes constitutes a violation of the principles of the United Nations Charter, international law, and the statute of the agency, namely the IAEA. And he says the IAEA has consistently underlined that, quote, armed attacks on nuclear facilities could result in radioactive releases with grave consequences within and beyond the boundaries of the state which has been attacked, close quote. I think most of us didn't need to hear that from Grossi, that the attacks on these facilities have the potential to cause extraordinary harm to civilian populations and long-term sinister damage to the environment, not just within Iran itself, which is horrifying enough, but well beyond its borders, depending upon the nature and the extent of any release of radioactive material. One would think that given the stakes, which Grossi himself acknowledges, that he could have used some harsher language, like, we condemn Israel's attacks on these nuclear facilities. Remember, this is the same guy, Grossi, who at least implicitly was lending credence to the West's claims that Russia was shelling the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant in Ukraine, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, at a time when Russian forces controlled it. It was the most preposterous claim that they were shelling a nuclear facility that they themselves were controlling. It was almost certainly the Ukrainian forces that did that, but Grossi, just utterly avoided any controversy in that regard, and pretended as though that was a legitimate, a plausible interpretation of who was actually shelling the nuclear facility. But in any event, and of course, Iran has come out, says it has through an espionage operation, obtained evidence that Grossi was providing sensitive information about Iranian nuclear scientists and nuclear facilities to Israel. And now that Israel has killed senior scientists in Iran's nuclear program, you can be sure that this is going to deepen Iranian suspicions about the IAEA's impartiality and make it more likely that there's going to be a rupture in relations between the IAEA and the Islamic Republic. Now, how has Western governments responded to this? Well, let's take a look at a statement which I think is quite typical of what we're seeing. I saw a very similar statement from the Canadian government. This is Keir Starmer, Sir Keir, the Prime Minister of Britain. He calls for restraint. The government urged, quote, all parties to step back and reduce tensions urgently, close quote, after Israeli strikes on Iran, adding that, quote, now is the time for restraint, calm, and a return to diplomacy. Sure, now, after Israel has killed Iranian nuclear scientists, women, and children, struck nuclear facilities, an insanely dangerous and reckless act in violation of international law, now he wants restraint. Why wasn't he urging restraint publicly, warning Israel not to attack Iran over the last 72 hours when all these reports were appearing that that's exactly what Israel was preparing to do? And the Trump administration was withdrawing non-essential diplomatic personnel. All the signs were there that there was going to be an attack, notwithstanding this much vaunted, deception operation. Where was the statement from Starmer and other Western leaders warning Israel that it was essential that it exercise restraint and allow the negotiations to play out? This, we've seen the shtick over and over again. Western governments call for restraint only after Israel has done something that is lunatic and insanely provocative. But beforehand, no, you don't hear these calls for these restraint and these warnings that things could spiral out of control. So, as I say, this is typical of the statements from Western governments. I also want to show you, from the Guardian, which is proving with each passing day. Sorry to sound like I'm in a foul mood, because I am. This is just a terrible, terrible development for the entire world, frankly. And so I'm not going to mince words today. The Guardian, which has proven itself to be, frankly, toilet paper from a journalistic perspective over the last several years. Used to be a good newspaper. Now it's just garbage. So here's the Guardian pontificating on what all this means. And according to the Guardian, what this shows is that Trump is unable to restrain Netanyahu as the Middle East slips closer to chaos. So we're supposed to believe that Trump didn't want this to happen, that Trump didn't approve it, that Trump isn't facilitating it. The Guardian is basically propagating, it's participating in the kabuki theater, which is that, the Western governments can't control what Israel does. Israel is a sovereign nation, and it's situated in a tough neighborhood surrounded by all these bad hombres. And, at the end of the day, Israel's going to do what it's got to do, and we may not like it, but we have to respect it given the dangers they confront. That's the shtick. And the Guardian is doing everything possible to perpetuate this myth. Interestingly, even though the Guardian is intensely hostile to Donald Trump, that's how far the Guardian is willing to go to enable Western governments to distance themselves from the crimes of Israel. But at the end of the day, Israel is doing, my friends, I assure you, is doing exactly what Western governments want it to do, which is something that I've, been arguing, until I'm blue in the face for quite some time now. So what we have here, folks, is within 10 days of each other, there were two acts that could fairly be characterized as nuclear terror, supported, facilitated, approved by the United States government, namely Ukraine's attack on an arm of the Russian Federation's nuclear triad, Russia having enough nukes to destroy the world several times over. That was extremely, although those were legitimate military targets, and I don't call that terrorism per se, it was nuclear terror in the sense that it was greatly escalating the potential for a nuclear conflagration. And it was something that at the end of the day isn't going to help Ukraine win this war. It's not going to make any meaningful contribution to Ukraine winning this war. Ukraine will lose this war. And these types of provocations which have been approved and enabled by the United States government, are not going to change that outcome. And of course, the more obvious example of nuclear terror is the direct bombing by Israel and perhaps also by United States military assets of Iran's nuclear facilities. So these two events happened within 10 days of each other. I personally don't believe the timing of these things is coincidental. My best read on what's going on here is that the Trump administration, in a situation of plausible deniability, wanted to send a powerful and horrifying message to the entire world, and particularly the United States' perceived geopolitical rivals, and that is there's nothing we won't do. There's absolutely nothing that we won't do. There's no risk we will not take to preserve the Anglo-American Empire's hegemony. I think that was the message. Whether there was any message at all intended, because one possibility is that this was just straight up insane, that Trump is criminally insane, and there was no strategy behind it at all, no coherent message. That's a possibility too. But at the end of the day, reasonable people should be able to agree that the United States government and its proxies are now completely out of control, and all bets are off as to where this is going to go. I see we have Laith in the waiting room. I'm going to ask Laith just to sit tight because there's one other thing I want to do before we bring him into the conversation, and that is, actually, you know what? I'm going to bring Laith into the conversation now, and then I will play for you a clip from a speech I gave in Iran, and we can talk about it with our brother Laith. Good afternoon or good evening, Mr. Marouf. Thank you for joining us from Beirut, where it's now well into the night, and we hope you're keeping safe. As all of you, or many of you will know, Laith is the executive director of Free Palestine TV and has been doing, throughout the genocide, extraordinarily courageous reporting from I think it's fair to say, a pro-resistance perspective. Welcome back, Laith.
Good to be with you, Dimitri, although the news is not that great, but I want to say that it's already, missiles are falling on Tel Aviv as we are speaking right now. There's 100 ballistic missiles that are already entering the airspace of the Zionist colony. And so this is going to be a long night. It's going to be a long war. And this is just the first few hours of it. People need to buckle up. This is not going to end except with one of the two parties ceasing to exist. The Zionists have, and behind them the whole Zionist empire, not only the colony, have declared this a existential war from day one, October 7th. And anyone in the axis of resistance, or anyone that is freedom-loving people that thought that there's going to be reasonable leadership in the West that could not actually lead us towards World War III, they have now found themselves to have been foolish.
Mm-hmm. Laith, before I have so many questions for you, but I want to share with our audience an excerpt from a speech I gave in Tehran on May 7th, so a little bit more than a month ago, when I was there for the Soap Media Festival, and you'll see that this is edited. The only thing that's been edited out of my speech was the translation in Farsi. So the actual English part of my speech is there in its entirety. And this is what I had to say in the latter half of my speech about Trump. In February, the U.S. Secretary of Defense Hegseth gave a speech in Brussels about what Europe needed to do with regard to Ukraine. Hegseth told the Europeans that they needed to drastically increase their military spending and provide weaponry to Ukraine. Hegseth said that this would allow the United States to reallocate its resources to other adversaries. How can anybody take seriously Donald Trump's claim to want to end the Ukraine war when his defense secretary is telling the Europeans to drastically increase their military spending and give weapons to Ukraine? So who are these other adversaries that the US wants to focus on? Those adversaries are Iran and ultimately China. Iran is critically important because it is the last bastion of resistance to US domination of this region. The former top NATO general Wesley Clark revealed to us many years ago that the United States government had formulated a plan to destroy 7 resistance states. They included Libya, Iraq, Syria, and Sudan. Only one remains standing. Are we seriously to believe that the United States is going to stop now? What we have witnessed over the past 18 months is an attempt to isolate Iran and to prepare for the final assault on this country. The wholesale destruction of Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen are part of that plan. Now, some of you may ask, if all of this is true, why is the Trump administration trying to negotiate with Iran over nuclear enrichment? The reason is that the Trump administration knows that the vast majority of Americans do not want a war with this country. Donald Trump knows that the war with Iran is going to be very costly to the United States. So he wants to be able to say to the American people, when the price is being paid for that war, that he did all that he could to achieve peace.
So, why am I showing this to you all? I want to be very clear. I went on to say, I don't think you saw it in that clip, and I meant it. It was entirely sincere, that I really, really was hoping that I was wrong. This is not a prediction that I wanted to be right about, that they were going to attack Iran, but I was right. And the reason why I'm showing you this is not to boast. In fact, I can tell you I've made mistakes. I've made political misjudgments, and my analysis has been incorrect. So it's not that I'm trying to convince you that I'm infallible. Far from it. The reason is because there are a lot of people out there in the alternative media during the last 3 to 4 months who have been people who, many of whom have done very, very respectable and important work. And oftentimes they're right. They're spot on. And a lot of these people have not hesitated to condemn Israel, for example, for committing genocide, and to condemn its aggressions against other actors in the region, and U.S. support for Israel. So a lot of these analysts are doing good work, but for some reason, they keep giving Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt. And they keep legitimizing this idea that the man has an interest in peace. And I say to you now, and this is why I wanted to draw this speech to your attention, it was obvious. I've been saying for months that the United States was going to attack Iran, either directly or through Israel. It was obvious. And I think that the reason why these geopolitical commentators, it's not that they're trying to deceive you. My personal feeling, I'm trying to understand why they are so blind to the obvious warmongering nature of Donald Trump. I think it's because they like his domestic agenda. And so they're hesitant just to write him off completely from a foreign policy perspective. So, maybe they're in love with the fact that he's so hostile to immigrants. Maybe they're in love with the fact that he's cutting taxes, he wants to shrink the size of the U.S. government, that he's waging a war on wokeness, whatever that means, that he's hostile to the environmental movement. Something or things about the guy's domestic agenda is attractive to these people. And so they keep giving him the benefit of the doubt when they should stop. So I'm maybe I'm being a bit charitable here, but I think that's what's going on. And I'm prepared to assume that they're telling you what they honestly believe and that they are acting in good faith. But at this stage, my friends, if any geopolitical commentator tells you that Trump is trapped, that he didn't want to go down this path, and that he's really trying genuinely to bring an end to these wars, then when it comes to their analysis of Donald Trump, you should not listen to them. They're leading you astray. This man is a psychopathic war criminal, and his record demonstrates that abundantly. So that's what I wanted to say before we get into it with Laith. Laith, if you want to add anything to what I've just had to say about these people who keep giving Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt when it comes to peacemaking, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just watching these glorious images live of the Ministry of Defense being destroyed in Tel Aviv.
Can you give me a link, and maybe can we pull it up on the screen so people can see?
I'm just watching Al Jazeera Arabic. If you put Al Jazeera Arabic live in your search, you'll get it there. And I just have it on my phone here. I'm looking. And also you can probably all put Al Mayadeen and you'll get that too. So, what you're talking about is the main problem in all of those individuals that you're hinting to is that these people want to have America great power somehow still. These individuals are nationalist Americans. And me as a Palestinian, I wish the destruction of America. That's the only way that the rest of humanity can live, can survive. This is where the limitation of their analysis lies. The end of their thinking stops at America ceasing to be a superpower. They think that they want to have a good emperor over an empire that they're scared that is collapsing. Their cohesion of their society and their productivity and their innovation are falling behind. And they believe that stopping these wars will allow them to become number one again. So the limit is that they're, in the end, American supremacists. The rest of humanity cannot escape to a better future as long as the United States is not collapsed as an empire. The rest of humanity cannot have one day of peace if Israel continues to exist for one more day. This is where the difference in our analysis, me and you, to those who are limited by their dreams of having a benevolent empire.
Yeah. Are these the images you're seeing, what I pulled up on the screen there?
Yes. Yes. And if you see there's a play button on the top there, you can go, that's the live broadcast. On the left, yes, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. So this is Tel Aviv, and you can see one of the missiles hitting the Ministry of Defense.
Yeah, there's definitely missiles getting through. No question about it.
And this is the first wave. And I would say, like, it's one of the statements that you probably, your viewers would love to hear is, just half an hour ago, the Ayatollah Khamenei appeared on a live broadcast to the nation. The Israeli and Western Zionist empire were attempting to attack the towers of broadcasting in Iran to take down this speech because, as you can understand, part of the whole psychological warfare, if you noticed, in all the statements by Trump and the Israelis are trying to say that Ayatollah is now isolated. You're alone, buddy. Just give up, right? So they didn't want him to speak to the nation. And what he did is he, in his statement, he said the armed forces will make the enemy feel regret. Okay. The Iranian people should feel assured that the entity will not get away from punishment. That our armed forces will paralyze the enemy, and we will not resort to half solutions in our response. This is, I think, the most crucial point, which means we are now in a full-out war. And again, we go back to the fact that this war is an existential war. It's a decolonization war. And that means two things. An existential war means there will be only one existing party at the end of it. Mm-hmm. And I believe this Earth, this planet, cannot afford and will not be wide enough to have space for Zionism on it. It is us or us as indigenous people of this land that will, be standing at the end of this war. And decolonization war means that, and one one more thing about the existential war, is that our enemy, the Americans, the whole Zionist empire, and the colony itself, when they say this is an existential war, it means all bets are open. Every tactic will be used, no matter how forbidden, including genocide, as we see in Gaza, including targeting people in their homes and beds, including targeting embassies, including targeting nuclear reactors with nuclear fallout already being registered, by the way. There's already a nuclear leak, according to the Iranian nuclear power agency. That means now that I think Iran has finally decided to engage in this existential war on that scale. What we will see is similar responses from Iran now with these words from the Ayatollah. And the decolonization war means that millions of people will perish in this war that started on October 7th. And this war cannot be less than a 5-year war. And we're only in the beginning, first 2 years of it. And now we're getting to a scale of full regional war with serious armies, not militias versus the whole Western power, as has happened up until now. And look at those images from Tel Aviv as we're speaking. You see that? This is the block where the Ministry of Defense is. This is the block where it's also near the Knesset. So we should be expecting command centers in the Israeli state to be destroyed tonight. And I think, given the speeches by both the French president that said they will be defending Israel, or the German chancellor who said that they condemned Iran's attack on Israel before it even happened, we are going to a full war with all the might of the empire, and this is not going to be a ride in the park.
Yeah, I completely concur. So people are asking in the chat, because I did mention this, whether Netanyahu fled to Greece. So I'm reading a post by Matt Kennard on X. Matt Kennard is I would describe him as an anti-imperialist journalist. I think he's got a lot of credibility. I think he might be with Declassified UK, but I could be mistaken about that. And he wrote 3 hours ago, Benjamin Netanyahu's official plane Wing of Zion took off at 6:28 a.m. this morning and spent 45 minutes circling off the coast of Tel Aviv before landing. 4 hours later, it took off again and flew to Athens, Greece. What is this about? So, of course, we don't know who was in that plane, in the Wings of Zion, as they call it. But would anybody be surprised if, the genocidal war criminal fled the jurisdiction and went to the, sunny beaches of the Attican coast, just like his cowardly son is lounging in Miami as his fellow Israelis, lay down their lives for a genocide in Gaza? That wouldn't surprise me. But in any case, we really aren't in a position here to confirm whether or not at this stage, whether or not Netanyahu went to Greece. It wouldn't surprise me, by the way, at all, given the pro-genocide policies of Greece's disgraceful Mitsotakis government, that they would welcome him and give him refuge. But those look like some serious hits there in the heart of Tel Aviv. That's to be sure. I want to just read just to put a finer point on what you were saying, Laith. A statement, and I did already share this with our audience, but I'm just going to repeat the last part of the statement from the General Staff of the Iranian military today. There are no longer any limits to our response to this crime. The hand of divine vengeance shall reach this brutal terrorist entity and its supporters. Strong language, to be sure. What do you make of the words "and its supporters"? Do you anticipate that we are going to see strikes on U.S. military bases now in the days ahead, or do you think that the Iranian government is more likely to wait and see whether the U.S. becomes directly involved and officially involved on Israel's. I mean, they are directly involved. Let's be serious here, but officially involved with the full force.
That's the beauty of that missile, the way they keep on putting on loop coming down like that. Look, I just want to say that those words are, and the words of the Ayatollah are some of the harshest that we've heard. And I don't think Iran is not going to deliver on this because of the severity of the situation and the fact that the Israelis themselves said that they will continue to attack Iran for the next 14 days. Okay, this is what Netanyahu told his nation, that it's going to be 14 days of war on Iran. So no, we will see, I think, the assets of any country that is now participating in the taking down of Iran's missiles and drones, meaning the Jordanian state probably will be the primary target of this. This will open a space for the Iranian retaliation and also open a very much possibilities of destabilization on the ground that could lead to a ground path for any resistance groups that want to move from Iraq. This is where we're moving. We're going for a full-out war, so there's not going to be any pullbacks right now. And the best strategy right now for Iran is to shuffle the whole playing field as fast as possible to destabilize the footing of the Zionists and the West in the region. Another thing that we should be expecting is
I just want to, sorry to interrupt you. Watch this. You see that thing taking off there? So yeah. Let's just watch this again because this is very interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Laith. So you'll see the incoming missile. If they're going to play the loop again, let me see if they do. There's an incoming missile which hits, it strikes the ground.
Yeah, it strikes probably the battery for the air defenses, and the air defenses start, fire whatever is in their battery.
Yeah, watch. So the missile goes up after the impact, and look, it looks like it's going to strike the ground, the thing that came up from the battery. In any event, before you continue, I just want to say this is going to be very interesting in terms of who's going to run out of ammo first, because I think it was Hegseth or somebody said recently in response to complaints by Ukraine that it wasn't getting more air defense systems. We don't have any more to give, he was saying. The reports about the number of missiles and drones that Iran has in its arsenal, one can imagine a scenario. Right now, they do appear to be, taking out a significant number of the incoming drones or missiles. Hard to say which ones they are. They might just be the slower moving drones, but they're going to run out. And if Iran's arsenal is as large as some people suggest it is, things are going to degrade rapidly for the Israeli air defense systems, and then all bets are off as to the level of devastation that Iran may be able to inflict. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, Laith.
The other thing that we should be expecting Iran to target is all the airfields, not only inside the Zionist colony, but close to it, that the Zionist Air Force would be using, meaning Jordan, Greece, Cyprus, maybe Turkey, maybe Egypt. But they probably will keep Egypt and Turkey behind in their target list in terms of airfields. But for now, clearly all the Israeli Air Force, including the presidential plane, are being housed mainly in Cyprus and Greece. The whole Israeli Air Force is not on the tarmac inside the colony anymore. They're scared of the mass destruction that could happen to their Air Force, which is the only advantage they have. And therefore, I expect the Iranians to chase those jets to whoever is housing them, especially that all NATO main leaders have said they will be entering this battle on the side of the Zionist colony. So our brothers and sisters in Greece should get on the move on the streets to safeguard their nation before their own airfields are also destroyed.
What do you think about the, Israel its population is highly dependent for travel in and out of the country on Ben Gurion. And also, I believe there's a significant commercial airport in Haifa. But it wouldn't be difficult for Iran to basically make it nigh well impossible for Israelis to leave the country on commercial airliner. One would imagine they have the capacity to disable Ben Gurion and the airport in Haifa. Do you think they're likely to attempt to do that?
Yeah, I mean, already all flights to and out of the Zionist colony have been stopped since the morning. In fact, flights to Jordan also. And I think this is to continue. And, maybe the martyr Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was right when he warned these colonists that they should get out before their airports are closed. And this is where we're going, the path that we have taken. You did mention that those attacks on Russia's nuclear bombers, we have surpassed right now the nuclear threshold twice in a span of a week or something. The attacks on those nuclear bombers, and now the attacks on nuclear reactors using nuclear-tipped GBUs. So I think people should understand the severity of the situation, and Iran will be targeting the nuclear capabilities of the Zionist colony in the course of its response right now. So the nuclear fallout will be not only in Iran or the region. This is going to spill on a global scale. And, I don't blame what's happening on the Zionists and the West that is captured by these Zionists. I blame what's happening on the world powers like Russia and China that didn't take the threats seriously up until now of global catastrophe brought on us by the continued genocide in Palestine conducted by the Zionists and the existence of the Zionist colony. So, many parties in this world are going to be regretting the day that they allowed the genocide to continue for so long.
So, I thought about. I was quite confident that this subject was going to come up today, the subject of Russia and China. I want to just take us back to a conversation you and I had when the regime of Bashar al-Assad fell, and you felt that Russia had done a deal to secure the United States cooperation on the incorporation of those 4 oblasts and Crimea into Russia's sovereign territory, that in exchange for a commitment from Trump that he would support that, the Russian Federation basically abandoned Assad. And at the time, I expressed skepticism because I didn't think that the Russians, I didn't find it difficult to believe that the Russian Federation would prioritize, the Ukraine war over what was happening in Syria. That was entirely plausible to me, but I just found it difficult to believe that the Russian Federation would trust Trump to keep his end of the deal. And as you've seen, Laith, Trump is not, he is not at all indicated a willingness to satisfy Russia's demands when it comes to those oblasts. He's not willing to recognize Russian sovereignty over any part of them. He just wants to temporarily freeze the conflict, which Russia has said repeatedly is unacceptable. So when it comes to Russia, I don't know that what such a deal was done, but that's really not the main point I want to make. The main point I want to make is they are involved in an existential war against the whole of NATO on their own border. So one can understand, at least I will say this, you may not feel the same way. One could understand their unwillingness to become embroiled in the wars in West Asia. I have more difficulty accepting the passivity of the Chinese government. And I think it's time for China to get in the game. Not to go to war necessarily. I certainly don't want to see China going to war with a nuclear armed state. Absolutely not. But there are many ways in which China can assist Iran which now is going to be faced with the full force and fury of NATO. It's not just going to be the United States. It's not just going to be the rabid Israeli attack dog. We all know that the Brits and the Germans and the French, they're all going to get in on the action. And Iran is likely to need some assistance. So I hope that China provides, material assistance to Iran to prevent the destruction of the country by the West, which is exactly what the West has done repeatedly. It has destroyed countries in the Muslim and Arab world that have refused to be vassals of the United States. So do you think we may finally see some meaningful overt action on the part of China to support Iran?
I doubt it. Honestly, I wish I had a different answer for you, but I doubt it. And I doubt Russia will intervene either, even if the whole West attacks Iran simultaneously, even if they nuke Iran. Okay. And the situation in Syria with Russia, let me be very clear, Russia didn't have to defend Syria. Russia just had to allow Syria to liberate its land. It was Russia that stopped the Syrian forces and Hezbollah from liberating Idlib in 2018. And it was also the Russians that didn't allow the Syrians to use their air defenses, including the S-300 that they bought from Russia to shoot down Zionist Air Force. And the Zionist Air Force has been the crucial factor in the mass assassinations and mass destruction across the whole region that Russia could have ended with just deliveries of weapons. Look at Iran right now. It never got its S-400s delivered to it. So that's a choice that Russia is making. It doesn't have to defend Iran by giving it nuclear weapons or a nuclear umbrella like it does to Belarus or other Central Asian former Soviet states. It just has to give some weapons, like 10% of what the US is giving to Israel would probably be enough. So look at, I say all these things, and at the same time, I want it very clear that even the day of the fall of Damascus, there was columns of Hezbollah armored vehicles outside Homs, and the 4th Brigade of the Syrian Revolutionary Guard, Presidential Guard, that were liberating Hama and moving on from Hama towards the borders of Idlib city when they were actually attacked by unidentified jets coming from the coast of Syria. So the fall of the Syrian government was not a fluke, and Russia made its bets, thinking that maybe it will delay things in Ukraine, even if it doesn't trust the United States. And now Russia paid for it with what we saw, those attacks on its strategic bombers. The pager terrorist attacks are a prelude to everything that we saw in Russia. And what we're seeing right now in Iran is a continuation of that. And I don't see equivalent even military aid, let alone military alliance from the Russians and the Chinese, with their only remaining standing challenger to the West other than them on the whole planet. And so I don't know where this will go. Iran is just going to fight this alone, and I believe it's going to succeed with or without the Chinese and the Russians.
So I want to ask you about the Gulf monarchies, Laith. And by the way, I want to be clear. Like when I the kind of assistance that I'm contemplating, I'm not suggesting that anybody should provide nukes to Iran. I don't want to see this war get escalated any more than it already has been. But what I would hope is that the Chinese and the Russians would at least help bolster the country's air defenses and protect, above all, its civilian population from the horrors of a release of radioactive material, and to protect the nuclear facilities, which are being, sabotaged in the most brutal and criminal manner imaginable by Israel with U.S. and Western backing. So, I mean, that would be something not only in the interests of the Iranian people, it would be in the interest of all humanity that Israel be prevented from conducting any further strikes on those nuclear facilities. That's an extremely dangerous thing for us all. But in any event, with that clarification, I just want to talk to you about Saudi Arabia. So the foreign ministry of the Saudi autocracy put out a statement, looks like just after midnight today. And it was as follows: the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expresses its strong condemnation and denunciation of the blatant Israeli aggressions against the brotherly Islamic Republic of Iran, which undermine its sovereignty and security and constitute a clear violation of international laws and norms. While the kingdom condemns these heinous attacks, it affirms that the International Community and the Security Council bear a great responsibility to immediately halt this aggression. Now, Laith, you don't need to convince me that these people are pawns of the Anglo-American Empire.
You see that beautiful shower of missiles?
No, I
on
missed
the
it.
right?
I missed it.
Look at on the right, that shower of missiles just decimating Tel Aviv. Yeah, I mean, look, the statement is so over the top, over the top pro-Iranian, that is begging you to understand that they mean every opposite of the words that they wrote there. Brotherly, Muslim nation, whatever, these are all words that you've never heard Saudis say. So it's even done, I think, purposefully, so blatantly comedic in its wording to get everybody to understand. And
why, Laith? Why are they using this comedic? I mean, it sounds good on paper, right? But we know that there isn't any sincerity behind it. Why are they using this language?
This is all part of the psychological warfare, and they're flying Saudi and Emirati and Jordanian Air Force, shooting down missiles and drones, and they allowed their airspace, Saudi, Jordanian, and plus violated the Syrian and Iraqi airspace to attack Iran. So Iran needs to right now respond to all of this. And I think because the West is telling us that this is an existential war, it is important to target all the bases of the United States in the region, starting with their airfields. And this is why the majority of America's Air Force left Qatar, Al-Udeid, but they should destroy Al-Udeid. They should destroy the oil fields and gas fields of all of these vassal kingdoms in the Arabic world, because the trillions of dollars that these countries gave Trump a few weeks ago when he arrived is what's paying for the attack on Iran right now. It's what's paying for the genocide of Palestine.
Right. And by the way, I completely agree with you that if Israel ever had a right to exist, and I contest that that was a valid statement of the law, it certainly forfeited that right. And
breaking news, the
yes.
Iranians shot down an Israeli jet and captured the female pilot.
Wow. Where's that news, Laith?
I was on the running under there on Al Jazeera.
Oh, in Arabic.
Yes.
Wow. That is, what would be consistent with Netanyahu's behavior up until now is that he finds a way to have that pilot killed. The last thing he's going to want is a prisoner of war in the hands of Iran, a live one at any rate. So to go back to the Gulf monarchies, I mean, we can have a very interesting discussion about what we think should happen to them. Again, do you think that Iran's immediate inclination is going to be to attack military bases in the Gulf monarchies or other facilities like oil rigs, or do you think, at least in the initial phases of this existential war that it is now in, it is going to focus its ire on Israel?
I think tonight will be directed at Israel, but we will see the destruction of the air bases around the region as the next step, and who knows where we go after that. I don't think they will be destroying the oil fields and gas fields immediately, but the West is not going to allow us to escape that reality. And I say this, many people, tell me, why would the West want these oil and gas fields destroyed in the region? And the truth is, because this is what's feeding the factories in China. And the West wants to cut off the path for China to have energy, and also the trade routes for China as a prelude for an attack on China. So while it may look like it's suicidal for the US because it's assets, these oil fields and gas fields that it controls, but it has its own gas and oil fields, as the United States being, I think, the #1 producer in the world. And this will increase the dependency of Europe on American gas and oil, and that's all in the interest of the United States.
Right. So what's the mood there in Beirut, Laith, at this hour? Have you had an opportunity to gauge it, or have you basically been indoors gathering information about what's transpiring?
I've been mainly glued in front of the TV here, but I can tell you that the city is very quiet. I think everybody's just not even asking questions. They're just waiting to hear what's going to happen. There's not much questions to ask anymore, honestly. We're in the midst of it. You're going to see the answers come at you faster than asking the questions. And there's this, by the way, comment that keeps on popping, a Zionist that loves Israel on the screen here.
Yes,
I don't know. Yeah, we need to block them immediately and nuke them on the internet.
How does one do that? Sorry, this is confusing. Yes, I see this person is descended into troll hell. In any case, let's stay focused on the questions at hand here. So, they put you've got people on the ground in the West Bank, in the occupied West Bank, obviously, and the reports are that they put the entire the genocidal entity has put the entire West Bank in lockdown. Can you tell us anything about what's going on there right now? I mean, are you able to get any information from your people on the ground about whether the terrorist military of Israel is now escalating its crimes against the Palestinian people in the West Bank, or is it just basically locked down and nothing really happening?
I think it's mainly locked down, and they're all in their bunkers. Number one, the vicious colonists. Colonists like to bully unarmed civilians, but now they're all like rats in holes. And the Israeli military is also in their bunkers. And what we're not seeing out of these pictures on Al Jazeera is that we know that bases and colonies inside and around Jerusalem are being hit also, not only Tel Aviv. So what we're hearing from people in the West Bank and all the way in Amman, Jordan, is that they're hearing the explosions in Jerusalem and around Jerusalem. So the explosions are loud enough to carry that far. and that gives us a hint why there's a total media blackout on what's happening in Jerusalem and in the West Bank. We may even find out as soon as this, more news starts coming out, that colonies in the West Bank have been targeted. And I've said this before. I'm sure the Iranians have interest right now to assassinate Ben Gvir, who lives with his family and 2 other fanatic Zionist colonists in the heart of Hebron, and Smotrich, who lives in another Zionist colony in the West Bank, which right now, Kadumim colony. Those houses and those colonies could be probably on the list of targets of Iran tonight.
Right. Sorry, excuse me for 1 moment. Let me find a way to shut that down. My apologies, everybody. I'll just turn that off. So you were saying, please continue.
Yeah, so I think there is currently attacks on colonies in the West Bank by Iran and on targets inside. Whoa, you saw that?
Oh, wow. That's right in the heart of Tel Aviv, it looks like.
Yeah, right in the heart of Tel Aviv. And look,
that thing was coming in.
Ministry of Defense right there.
Is that which one? The one where the column of smoke is coming up?
On its left, the lower one that's circular, that's going to get hit right now. You saw that?
Yeah, that's the Ministry of Defense?
Yeah.
That thing is coming in at high velocity. Wow.
Yeah, so it's a hypersonic missile there, and it has a heavy load. So
Right.
that building is decimated.
Wow. Now, what about Gaza? I think a lot of us fear the worst, that as the eyes of the world are now fixated on the retaliation. And let me just say, I have to pause for a moment before we talk about Gaza. Everybody who cares about this conflict, as far as I'm concerned, everybody should care about this conflict because of the potential for human suffering and the dangers for all of us. Beware that you are going to get bombarded if you live in the West or pay any attention to the Western media. You're going to get bombarded with hyperbole about Israel's military successes, a lot of hyperbole, outright fabrications about what Israel accomplished, and the Western media will undoubtedly downplay to the maximum possible degree any damage that Iran manages to inflict on Israel in retaliation for Israel's declaration of war on the Islamic Republic. So it's important to understand that you're not going to get anywhere close to an accurate picture from the Western corporate media about what is happening. And frankly, I don't think you're likely to get it from Al Jazeera English. So I think that they are very much in the American camp. Never forget that Qatar, is the site of the largest U.S. military base in West Asia. It is not pro-Palestinian. It is not a friend of the resistance. It is an enemy of the resistance. And their news organization, Al Jazeera, despite all of the sympathy it expresses for the Palestinian people, is at the end of the day beholden to the Anglo-American Empire. That's just reality, in my opinion. I think it's important to stress that. Now, going back to Gaza, Laith, what is happening there? What can you tell us about conditions on the ground? Has there been any change since within the past 24 hours? Do you have any indication of how the people there who have been undergoing genocide for 20 months, how they're responding to the retaliation by Iran and so forth?
Well, the Zionists cut off the internet yesterday across the whole Gaza, and we haven't been able to receive much communication except with people that have satellite eSIMs, and that's far, and few and far between. And we know that at least 120 somewhat civilians were killed since the morning in Gaza. Around those
aid traps, aid killing fields, whatever you want to call them. And so the starvation and the genocide continues. There was a few air raids in the past few hours by the Zionists on Jabalia area in Gaza. And that also, again, proves that the Israelis are not doing all these attacks alone. They can't be attacking Gaza and Iran and Syria and Lebanon and Yemen all by themselves at the same time. So I think people in Gaza are watching and they're hearing the explosions in Tel Aviv and in the Negev desert. They remember the last time Truthful Promise happened. There was internet, and we saw this mass celebrations in the streets of Gaza at the time. The feelings in the streets of Gaza must be as much as they can. They're still probably somber because of how much further the genocide and the destruction of Gaza are right now, and nothing will quench the feelings of people in Gaza except the total defeat of the Zionist colony.
Entirely understandable. Now, apparently, Hezbollah has put out a statement that it would not, as I understand the statement, Hezbollah will not initiate its own attack on Israel in retaliation for Israel's strikes on Iran. What do you make of that statement, Laith?
I think, we should keep it in the context of the fog of war right now. And we are seeing drones fly and hit Israeli targets in the north of Palestine. Up until now, we don't know who are the people that are firing these drones. Are they Iraqi? Are they Iranian? And or they Hezbollah? So I'm sure Hezbollah would like to stretch this ambiguity as far as possible. There will be an eventuality when there's a full-out war with everybody involved in it. This is, again, something that's coming no matter what they try to do. They will announce entering into this war when it's going to actually have much better results. We'll see what happens to the Israeli first lines of defense around Lebanon in the retaliation by Iran in the next few days, and how that will open new avenues for Hezbollah's involvement in it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that we might see one or more, now that this is expanded to this level, that we might see one or more of these vassal regimes in the Gulf, and particularly I'm thinking about Jordan, removed from power by an indigenous revolt, not by Iranian military force, but by an indigenous revolt?
I think that indigenous revolt could only happen under the pressure of total destruction of the power of the regime in Jordan. I don't think that will happen by itself. There has to be targeting of that regime, and there has to be involvement of fighters from outside the country, because the people in Jordan are not armed enough to confront the American presence in their country and the British and the French bases that are there. So, we'll see how much of the assets of the West gets destroyed inside Jordan over the next 48 hours. That will be crucial to understand how things could change inside the country. I caution that we, think that there's going to be a fast timeline for the various stages of this war. If Iran wants to actually win this war, it has to have striking blows to the air defenses, air capabilities of the West in the region,
and then take the rest slow in terms of raising the level. But the most crucial thing is the next 48 hours, how much of Iran, the West's capabilities in air power in the region will be affected.
Right. Well, we've been going for well over an hour and a half now, so I think we're going to call it a day. Before we do that, though, do you have anything you want to add, Laith, to what's happening? Any issue you think we ought to chat about before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, the media is saying right now the number of Israeli jets downed over Iran is up to 2 now. They captured, as I said, 1 pilot. They're looking for the other pilots. You know, people in the West, and this is the audience that's watching this, they have a role to play in this war and avoiding us going to the bottom of the abyss of a nuclear holocaust for all of humanity. And what it entails is to take serious action to stop the movement of the war machine. We're not talking about demonstrations. We're talking about serious actions to get in the front of the war machine that the West is deploying right now. And people in Italy, in Greece, in France, in the UK, in Canada, in the US, they all have a chance and they can deliver on strategic defeats to the West themselves as citizens if they take these things seriously.
Hear, hear, Laith. I'm very glad that you made a point of raising with our audience the ways in which we can contribute. This is a multi-front war. It's a multifaceted war. And even if you're not involved in the military aspects of it, you can make a contribution, a very significant contribution through peaceful resistance and what I like to call militant civil disobedience. If you act with sufficient vigor and you're determined and you don't get discouraged easily, you have what I've sometimes referred to as the warrior spirit, and you maintain, you don't allow, temporary setbacks to diminish your determination to come to the aid of our brothers and sisters in Palestine and throughout West Asia, then you can make an important contribution to defeating the scourge of Western imperialism and racism, which we're watching and having to cope with every day of our lives in this terrible time in which we live. So thank you very much, Laith. Sorry, people, I don't think we're going to have time today for a Q&A. We typically do have a Q&A just because of time limitations. I have something else I need to attend to right now. We'll be back with another live stream, I'm sure, in the days ahead, and we'll make a point of ensuring that there's an adequate opportunity for people in our audience to ask questions. So Laith, please stay safe, brother. I know that you're in a very dangerous place right now, and you've been spending a lot of time under the watchful eye of the genocidal military and its drones in South Lebanon. So how can people make a contribution to your extraordinarily courageous media organization?
Yeah, people can go to freepalestine.video to donate whatever they can. We are producing almost daily reports from Lebanon and Palestine. I want to say that we just surpassed 1,800 unique exclusive reports from the West Bank and Palestine and Lebanon over in 1 year. And, this is all thanks to the donations of the viewers. Our budget is very minuscule, but we have delivered more content to the viewers in English in video format than any other media outlet that is independent. And so please, please, please donate so we can continue this work. freepalestine.video is the website.
Great. And Thanks to our audience today for joining us from all around the world, and we look forward to continuing the conversation in the days ahead. Peace out.